All right.
All right, so welcome to IndyUseR, the August 2022 meetup. We are here both virtually and in person in sunny Indianapolis. So let me share my screen. Today we're going to be talking about Quarto and a little bit about my journey with Quarto so far. So let's try this out. Share screen. Bam, bam. All right, I'll move this over here. This over here. All right, so, okay. All right, so welcome to my Quarto experience. Probably as many people know, I'm not doing a lot of data science per se, but I do find myself often wanting to share ideas with people. And so that's kind of the angle at which I come to learning about Quarto. I think for the most part, when I want to share ideas, there's kind of like three types of outputs that I'm interested in producing. The first type is going to be like some HTML, maybe like a website or something like that. I might want to produce some slides. So I do presentations a lot. I like to do slides for presentations. And then every once in a while, I wanted to produce like a PDF document. You know, like I had to write a letter a couple of months ago, and my first thought to myself was, I don't remember how to properly format a letter. You know, like all those things that I was probably supposed to learn in like third grade about where I was supposed to put the different pieces. I was like, I don't remember that anymore. But I do know that there's a proper place for these things, you know. And so I went into our studio and I was like, I feel like there's probably a template in like R Markdown for just like a letter. And I found one, and then I filled it out. I wrote my R Markdown and rendered it, and bam, I have a PDF of a letter, like, and it looked good, you know. So that's kind of like my extent to sharing this stuff, you know. So I tend to write my HTML files, like my websites and my PDF files, in R Markdown, and I tend to make my slides in Google Slides, right? And that's really because the Google Slides allows me to easily put together a bunch of slides. I can drag and drop things. I like to make my own images, so I can kind of like place images, push arrows around to pointing at different things on the slides. And so it's just really easy for me to put together a bunch of slides with Google Slides, right? All right, but I guess one of the things that I guess a couple of months ago, I started hearing. Okay, hold on. Before I get to that, let me tell you, one of the reasons why I produce my outputs this way is because it works with the way that I work naturally. You know, like I write a lot of software, I do a lot of programming. I like programming. You know, if I can program something, I'm usually much happier because it doesn't feel like as much work. You know, so these tools, the R Markdown, to some extent, the Google Slides, they fit into what I consider like my workflow. You know, my workflow is doing things like versioning software. You know, I often want to take a thing that I created, store it in some kind of source code repository, and then be able to come back to it months later and look at the changes that I've made over time. You know, another part of my workflow is collaborating with people. Right? I love being able to send somebody to a website or something like GitHub and say, here's the document, if you have changes, you can add your changes right there, or you can check out a repository and or clone a repository and make the changes to the text file. And actually, having text files is something that I think is really important to me, mainly because when I want to go back in time and figure out when was the last time that I dealt with this idea or made some changes on this idea, I can use something as simple as grep. I can grep through the files and figure out what keyword I want to use or want to search for, and then grep comes back and tells me all of the places in the past where I've used that idea. And that's something that I can't really do as easily if all my stuff is stored into a binary file. So for my websites, for my my PDFs, I can use our Markdown to create those. I still have a problem with my Google Slides though, because those are like stuck up on Google, and I can't version them. I think maybe Google has a way to go and look at your changes and stuff, but I don't have a copy. I don't usually keep a copy of those down on my computer or push them up to a source code repository. And so I kind of feel a certain way about that all my presentations are like stuck up in Google right now. Before that, I was using something like LibreOffice. Before that, it was probably OpenOffice. Before that, it was probably StarOffice. It was all the Office suites. And with those, sometimes you have problems with taking one format. Maybe somebody created a PowerPoint slide, and I don't have PowerPoint, and so the slides come up a little bit wonky for me. So what I'm really looking for as part of my workflow are tools that I can create artifacts easily with, and that other people can consume those artifacts. And so a while ago, I started hearing about this thing called Quarto. It was maybe like 6 months ago or something. I started hearing these rumblings about this thing called Quarto. And probably the first thing, when I went to their website, one of the first things I noticed is that it says, Quarto is an open source scientific and technical publishing system. And so that made me think, like, what is different? I thought our Markdown was the open source scientific technical publishing system, built on Pandoc. I thought that was our Markdown. And so that really got me thinking, like, what's the difference between Quarto and our Markdown? Because I like using our Markdown a lot, but is there something special that Quarto would give me? And so I got good news for you. If you're familiar with our Markdown, then Quarto is going to feel really similar to you, right? You can take our Markdown files, you can run them through Quarto, and they almost, this is where the website said, they almost always work. It's almost works perfectly. I haven't had a problem with our Markdown files that I've taken and just run them through Quarto. But my R Markdown files are probably like really simple kinds of toy examples, spirograph or something like that. So that's the good news. And, if there's good news, then there has to be better news. The better news is that you can start mixing in other languages. That gets easier. So if you have like some analysis in R and you have some analysis in some other language, maybe you have some analysis in Julia or something, then you can start to think about using, so this is my thought on it. Like, you might be able to start to think about using Quarto to render both of those. So you're using one tool, Quarto, to render both of those documents, And so I like that. You'll write your stuff in Markdown in your favorite language, and then you'll ask Quarto to just convert this to whatever page that you want. Okay, so one of the things that Quarto talks about is being a multi-language multi-engine system, right? And this is probably one of the things that makes it different from our Markdown. So with Quarto, you start off by writing like this file called a QMD file. It's like the Quarto Markdown file, right? And depending on there's a couple of things that will determine what engine you end up sending this through. You can see the engine in this picture is the knitter engine. But I think if Quarto sees like an R coding block, or if you explicitly tell your QMD file at the top of it to use the knitter engine, then Quarto will send your QMD file through the knitter engine. Knitter will run all your code blocks and will produce an output markdown file. So the markdown file is going to be all your text along with all the computed results. And then it will run it through Pandoc to turn it into whatever your final output format is, right? So Quarto is all about taking these QMD files, running the code blocks through some kind of engine, something like knitter, and then producing the markdown file, running that through Pandoc to produce whatever kind of output you're looking for. So Quarto can and Pandoc can convert these markdown files to Word documents, PDFs, web pages, books, Reveal.js presentations. Like there's a whole slew of things that Pandoc can convert things to. And so Quarto is kind of like the system that wraps all that up into a nice tidy environment for you to do that conversion. So in the case where Quarto finds that your code blocks are like Python or Julia or something like that, that's not handled, some kind of code block that's not handled by knitter, or if you explicitly tell Quarto in the top of your QMD file to use the Jupyter engine, then it will try to it'll look on your system, see if you have Jupyter installed. It'll try to use one of the Jupyter kernels in order to convert the code blocks, perform all the computations in the code blocks, and convert that file to regular Markdown. Right? And then from Markdown, Pandoc takes over and converts it to your final output. Right? So I think there's a third engine that they've been supporting, which is the observable JS. Yeah, right. So I think that's a new one for me because I've never done anything with observable JS, but I think they have that kind of bundled into Quarto as like an engine that is available.
And also my understanding is that still, if you want to mix and match R and Python within the same document, then it will, let's say, when you do it through Quarto, you'll need to use reticulate or something. So you have Python specific QMD or R specific QMD, but mixing and matching is possible. But then in that case, it's not using native Python, but through reticulate.
Yeah, and in fact, that's one of when I first started looking at Quarto, that's what I thought it was going to be. Like, no, I thought that, oh, well, they're talking multi-language, multi-engine. Like, I didn't really know about the multi-engine part, but they were talking multi-language. And I was like, oh, does this mean that I can now just put like code blocks of all different types into my QMD file and then just run it through and it will figure out, where to put this, how to run those computational blocks. And it took me a while to figure this out, but it's really up to the engine, So if you're using the knitter engine, knitter knows about a lot of different languages. And so if you want to do Python in R, then you're going to need the reticulate engine, the reticulate library in R, because that's how knitter deals with Python, is through the reticulate library, right? But if you're doing Jupyter, then you might need, I I haven't tried this one, but my guess is that actually I know so little about Jupyter that this is rampant speculation. Right? Put the banner up. Rampant speculation. My guess is that I think you have to pick you have to pick a kernel in Jupyter to run your code with. And I haven't figured out a way to say, I actually want to use multiple kernels in the same QMD file, because if I have like a Python code chunk and I have an R code chunk and a Julia code chunk, I have to make a decision on which kernel I want to use. And if that kernel doesn't support those other languages, then I don't think it will do the rendering. So if that is true, then I feel like that's one of the advantages that would go towards Knitter, is that Knitter can handle these multiple languages in the same file. All right. So you have multiple languages, but there's also multiple engines that are available to render all these different language code blocks. And on the website, they said that there is building a new engine is like adding a plugin. So if in the future we have more languages or different engines that we want to support, like let's say somebody comes up with a new engine for some of the languages that are already out there, then that can be added as a plugin for Quarto. Okay, so we've talked a lot about these QMD files. And if you've never used R Markdown, then you might be saying, hey, like, what is a QMD file? So let's go through a little example that kind of highlights what the QMD file is, the file format, and let's write our first QMD Quarto document. Right? So to help us motivate this example, we're going to be using our favorite example, the spirograph. I think it's according to this box that I got off of a website of a major retailer, a major internet retailer. It says that it's the easiest way for young artists to make amazing designs. So I have to take them at their word for it. Somebody thought that these designs were amazing enough to write a paper about it. And so this paper kind of describes, maybe I should put a citation to the paper in here, but this paper kind of describes how we can mathematically approximate a spirograph. And probably in this paper, they show this particular equation. They're like, hey, a spirograph, you can approximate a spirograph by just doing the sum of exponentials, right? So that's what we're going to be programming today. But probably the most fun and the most important thing to note about this equation is that if we want to approximate a three-wheeled spirograph, we can take three exponentials and add them up together, and voila, it's done. So we're going to be using a function that accepts. It's going to accept like three. I think they have to be integers, but it's going to accept like three numbers, and it'll plug it into this equation, and it'll give us some like points for a spirograph. So let me get that set up. You'll notice that from these slides, I did manage to put together a Quarto presentation for these slides. And so that was a fun experience. And maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit here. So I do all my, I've done a lot of my R Markdown stuff inside of RStudio IDE. I know for Quarto, there's a number of IDE options out there. You can use VS Code, which if you've never used VS Code, like, and you're looking for a new editor, that's a recommended one. I know a lot of, like, they just got a ton of plugins and stuff. And I think Quarto has a plugin for VS Code so that you can, like, quickly launch your output document and see what it looks like, syntax highlighting, all that stuff. So, all right. So to get started, I'm just going to this is like the newest version of RStudio IDE. I think it's like the July version or something like that. And the July version of, well, I think even the February version, it comes with Quarto installed inside of it, right? So it has the library and stuff already there. So you don't have to do anything extra in order to install it on your system. Quarto has a command line version as well, and if you just want to install like Quarto without installing RStudio IDE, then there's a binary on the website. You download it, install it on your system, and bam, you're ready to go. So I found the installation process pretty easy. We're going to do a Quarto document here. And it's going to ask me a couple of questions. So I'm just going to say, we'll call this thing, give it a title, all about spirographs. All about spirographs. Great. We're going to create an HTML document, and we'll use the knitter engine here. So when I create that, it tells me, like, right off the bat, like, it gives me all of these pieces here. This is like the regular file format for a knitter document, or for a Quarto document. You'll notice that there are kind of two major sections. One is the configuration section at the very top. So this is like a bunch of YAML code. If you're not familiar with YAML, I think it used to be an acronym, but now they changed the name of it so that it's no longer an acronym. Like, YAML is yet another markup language, but now it's not that. But it's basically good for configuration. You put configuration options in here, and then down below you're going to find your literate programming, right? So that is like mixing some kind of prose or content, some kind of text, along with code blocks. So the idea of literate programming, that's been around for a while, and our Markdown was kind of built on top of that. Quarto is also kind of built on top of it and taking advantage of those ideas. All right. So two configuration options. They tell us the title and the format of the output that we want to build. And so just right off the bat, let's try rendering this thing, because I always like to know that before I mess up a document, that it at least worked at some point. So I'm going to just try to render this. It's going to ask me, what would I like to name this? I'm going to call it, let's see, maybe I should go into the examples directory. We'll create a new one here, new folder. Spirographs. Call this all about spirographs. .qmd. All right, so I already had a number of these, a number of the packages that you might need. I already had them installed on my system. So you're going to need things like, if you're using the knitter engine, you're going to need knitter, probably going to need, if you're dealing with Markdown, you might need the Markdown package. But I kind of felt like whatever packages I needed, RStudio IDE and Quarto, they told me about them. You know, they were like, hey, you need this package, or this thing needs to be upgraded, or whatever. So, all right. So in the end, we see that we have this document, and it took our title, it put that up here. We didn't have any kind of like author information in here, so it didn't add any of that. But all of these, I guess all the text that you're seeing down here, this is called markdown text, and that just means that it's kind of like, instead of writing HTML, straight up HTML to make a web page, you give special little symbols like ##. That means that it's going to be an H2 header, a second level header, and that gets translated over to a header like this, right? And then you get your text. It automatically kind of translated the link into a link for us. Let's see if I can get that kind of stuff going on. Get this out of the way. So it kind of translated this into a link, and then you can see if we wanted to make something bold, you can use ***. So there's a whole language around Markdown that you can learn and apply to these files to get them to convert things into HTML. For code blocks, we're doing a regular kind of R Markdown style code block here. 3 backticks to fence in your coding section, and then curly brackets with the language on the inside to denote what kind of language you want to use when you're executing this code. So you'll notice that I think because we never specified an engine to use inside of here, and so it automatically, I think Quarto, when it saw this first R block, I think it automatically went to using knitr to run the code blocks inside of this file. You'll also notice that one of the kind of newer features, I don't know if this is in R Markdown. I feel like they've added this. They might have added this to R Markdown. Is that you no longer have to put your code block options into the curly brackets, right? So it used to be that if you wanted to say like echo true, then you'd have to put it up here, or echo equals false or something like that up here, and that you no longer have to do that anymore. With this new style, you can put all your code block options with a hash followed by a bar. So that kind of makes like a little comment inside of there. So I think that helps make things a little bit neater when you're writing your documents out. You don't have this like really long, like all your options just kind of like plastered across the screen. You can kind of line them up nice and skim them. I like that when I'm writing my code. But the echo option just means like, do you want to show the code, or do you just want to show the result? You see that for this one, they showed the code and the result. So here's the code, here's the result. For that second one, they only showed the result because we said echo is false. Right? All right, so, and if anybody has questions, feel free to just like interrupt. So I'm going to get rid of some of this stuff because I don't really want to talk about Quarto and running code in my document. I want to talk about spirographs. You know, that's why we're all here today, is to learn more about spirographs.
Hey, Derek.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a quick question. I have it. I'm not an advanced user of R Markdown, but so far I haven't seen anything that R Markdown that couldn't do. Is that correct?
Yeah, so far. I think the big thing would be that, I guess, for myself, the thing that I think that differentiates Quarto is that with R and R Markdown, you can do almost all this stuff, right? If you were to go to a language like Julia and you wanted to do something similar with Julia, you wouldn't be able to do that. You wouldn't be able to write like a markdown document and have it run your Julia code inside of like a Julia interpreter. Like you can write an R markdown document and have a Julia code block, but that's still going to be running through like the knitter engine. And so I think the thing that Quarto starts to bring us is the ability to run more engines to support other programming languages.
Yeah.
Right.
I think even during the like Prodi conference and other YouTube videos, folks said that for our folks who are using R Markdown, it's fine to continue using it because it's going to be still maintained. It's just that I think they said the new features and development is going to happen. Quarto. So I think they kind of try to say that if you are happy with R Markdown, fine, like you don't have to change. But
yeah, so I think I also read that the R Markdown. I think you're going to find that a lot of, like I said earlier, a lot of this stuff is going to look familiar. It's going to look about the same, and but there may be some new features that don't make their way into R Markdown, but are available in Quarto, at least for now.
The second question, I haven't used R Markdown in over a year, so like the experience of Pandoc rendering your final document into a PDF file, wherever that final destination is there enhancements in that area with or is it pretty much its experience probably pretty similar to the recent version of R Markdown?
My guess is that I don't know if I can answer this accurately. My guess is that if there were adjustments made to Pandoc to support certain things, those adjustments would have been open sourced and available to R Markdown as well.
Okay.
Because Quarto may be using slightly different Lua code or something. Maybe they add some libraries to Pandoc, but my guess is that if the Quarto team felt like it was something that would benefit all of Pandoc, they probably pushed that as a pull request over to the Pandoc team, and so that it could be open sourced for anybody who's using Pandoc.
Thanks.
All right, so let's see here. So I have this Markdown file that I was using for describing describing all the fun that I could have with spirographs. The Markdown file kind of looks like this. We have a level 1 header, and then we got like a little paragraph about the spirograph equation that we showed on that last website. So it's like these two equations here, and then we have a little bit of like a code block here, and we tell the code block that we're using the R programming language, and so that kind of lets it know how to render this code, but it's not actually going to run the code because this is just straight up Markdown file, right? And so my goal with this file is I'd actually like to turn it into a Quarto document where the code is actually rendered, and we'll plot the final output. Like if we render this right now, we're going to just see that it produces a document. You can see the equation and stuff, but it never ran the code. It just formatted the code for us, right? So let's see if we can turn this into like a Quarto document where instead of telling us how to plot the code, it's actually going to plot the thing, right? All right, so I'm going to copy this. Let's see. Maybe not. copy that real quick. And then I'm going to put it into all about spirographs. Okay, so I think the first thing I'm going to do is turn this into a second level header, because our first level header is going to be the title. So I want this introduction to spirographs to be like a second level header. Next, I got a couple of lines, like a paragraph here talking about the equation. Notice that inside of Quarto, you can just use, just like regular Markdown, you can use like LaTeX style equations in there. So that's really handy if you want to describe an equation. When I get down to my code block here, instead of just saying like, I have a code block that I want to run, I'm going to actually make this a real like our Markdown style or Quarto style code block. So I'm going to put the brackets around this thing, and you can see that the IDE just like automatically recognizes that, oh, that's a code block, something that you want to execute at some point. What this is doing is this is like our function. It's called Spyro. It approximates this equation. It creates a sum of exponentials where we hand it like the n1, n2, and n3, and in the end we're going to get back like a tibble full of XY locations that we're then going to plot later on. So that's what we're doing here. We're calling the Spyro function with 3 different n values. We get the result, we print out the result, and then down below, we're going to plot this. So previously, we were just showing the code. Let me make this a real code block here. And hopefully that will like actually execute the code, and we'll get to see what the spirograph looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and render this and we'll see what our document looks like so far. So in the background, remember that this ran through the document. It saw that, hey, I have an R code block, so I'm going to run this through maybe the knitter engine. And then, because I have 2 code blocks here, I'm going to run both of them. So you can kind of see the output that was generated from running those code blocks. Here's what is stored in the result. It's a tibble with like 1,000 points, 1,000 X and Y points inside of it. And then down below, you can see we plotted the spirograph. Here's the code for plotting, and then here is the actual result, right? And so I would say that that's like the basics of building a Quarto document, is remembering that you have this configuration section up top, and at least for an HTML document, you can mix in your Markdown text along with your code blocks, right? Inside of here, we can start doing some fancy stuff, like just saying plot the spirograph. That's not super exciting, and maybe this isn't the document that I would want to hand to somebody else. Maybe I want to add in some sections in here. So let's try to fancy this thing up. Maybe we'll make plot the spirograph its own. Should we make that its own section? So we got 2 sections here. We got an introduction to spirographs, and then we have plot. But it kind of feels like we have the introduction up here. This solves the equation. That for that. Maybe we need another section in here. We'll call this. I wonder if you can do this. The Spyro function in R, right? So we're going to make another section there, maybe a 3-level header here. Another header, we can call this code. 3-field spirograph. Right? And then add in to create a 3-field spirograph in 1 in 2 and in 3. So I'm just adding in a little text there, and then maybe we'll make this a level 3 header, and that way these two things will kind of show up underneath the Spiro function header. So let's try that. Save and render that. All right. So now we're starting to see these two. We got a couple of headers, some subheaders here, right? Maybe I don't want to show this. So I think we could probably use like let's see. I don't want to show this code, so I'm going to use that trick that they showed before, where we can add in, I think it was echo colon false, so that it won't echo the code, but it will still show us the result. Let's try that. Okay, so now we have like the actual plot. And then like from here, once you get the document kind of set up, there's all kinds of like little fidgety things you could do inside the document. Like maybe we should add in, we can change some of the configuration in here. We can say like author, Greg Kearney, do that. Maybe we can, underneath the format, like there's tons of little options in here. I think there's like a theme. Let's try theme. Maybe Minty's a theme? I don't know. Let's see what happens. Oh, it did it. Okay, so you'll notice that on the Minty theme, it looks almost the same, but you know our links are green. It's a little bit washed out. I don't know if I like this theme. You can't really tell that there's a code block here, but there is one. You know, so you can play around with the themes and stuff. But there's a lot of stuff in these a lot of options here that you can change. If we go to the porto.org, I guess I gotta accept. Let's try this. Okay, so let me expand this just a little bit. So if you're ever looking like, what can I put into this little header section? Like all right, the Quarto page has a lot of documentation, and so they have a bunch of examples of things you can put in there. Like we could have added in, like underneath this format HTML, we could have added in a table of contents, if we had our own custom CSS, we could have added that in for styling things. You know, there is. I wonder if it's under reference HTML documents. Oh, here they are. Here's like a treasure trove of things that you can add in to this header section. And I think some of these can also apply to inside of your code chunks, right? So You can choose your theme. If you have a DOI that you want to associate with it, or maybe set up an abstract, a date, you can do all that stuff. So that's all stuff that, like you mentioned, Ryan, like a lot of that stuff is also available inside of R Markdown, right? So that's one of the nice things about it right now is that if you had an old R Markdown file, you can run it through Quarto and just kind of get going. It'll probably work. Any questions on this particular document? Anything anybody was interested in seeing before I move on to another document? All right.
Yes. Question. You had the different types of titles, one level, second level, so on and so forth. I'm thinking that that information can be used to make like a table of contents.
Yeah.
Also, that's something that you're getting to.
Yeah. So actually, that's what. So let's try that out real quick, because I think that's I don't know. That's one of the things I like to see. Like when people have their web pages and stuff, and it's got like a table of contents. I'm like, wow, you fancy, right? Let's look at this here. So I'm going to say TOC, I think we can say TOC true, and it will give us a table of contents.
Oh, wow. That's super hard.
So bam, we got our table of contents.
Wow.
Right? So
wow.
I like using these R Markdown or Markdown style things is because I don't know how to make a table of contents that floats on the right side of my web page, but all I had to do here was just put in this little formatting thing and it did it for me, And so there's little templates that you can use to format your web page or your PDF document. I haven't tried. Let's see. I don't think I wrote an example where the output was a PDF document. I think I've mainly been doing HTML documents, and then I did a presentation, a Reveal.js presentation. But ideally, I think you could probably do something like PDF, and then
you just need LaTeX if you do PDF.
Say again?
I think if you do the format PDF to render it, it needs like LaTeX or something like that.
I think you can do multiples of them though, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you need a colon after this or not, but let's see what that renders. Didn't like it. So let's say, let's see, does it tell us what it wanted? Oh, theme. Maybe it doesn't like theme as well. It has an empty value. It must, okay. Right, let me not try to be fancy here. Just gonna get rid of those and just say like this. Oh, it's probably not gonna render it over here anyway. All right, so it's chugging away at the background, running some LaTeX stuff. Oh my goodness! It even loaded it in the browser. But that's a nice little document here. I got page numbers. I didn't even have to ask for them. It looks like it gave me kind of like a little table of contents in the PDF. But yeah, so that's. I mean, this is why I like these types of tools, because I can quickly say, oh, I need a PDF of that or whatever. I want to show you this presentation real quick because it took me a while. This is my first Reveal.js presentation, and it took me a while to kind of get this going. I told you earlier I like the Google Slides, and it's mainly because I can drag and drop things, and I don't know if maybe I'm not doing like Reveal.js correctly or fully, but with my slides, I like to use a lot of pictures. And so it's really helpful if I can take pictures and like drag and drop them to exactly where I want them to be. I'm kind of good at like rotating things inside of like PowerPoint and getting them to be like drawing arrows and stuff like that. I feel like I can do that stuff pretty quickly. But I think the first thing I had to realize, or maybe the first thing I ended up doing, or maybe the fourth thing I ended up doing after some of the previous things failed, was I started drawing my pictures. Like I've always drawn my pictures in Inkscape, but I started drawing more of the slides, like composing, doing all the drag and drop composing that I would have normally done inside of like something like a Google slide. I did that inside of Inkscape. So you can see here, let me just show you the format for the slides. First, you have your regular YAML section here. You can see that I'm importing like a custom style sheet here. I ask for slide numbers to be set up and stuff like that. And then I start off, like your normal slides, let me come down to one of these. Your normal slides look more like this. Right, you start off with a second level header, and then you give the name of the slide, right? And then underneath it, you can give some HTML or you can give some more Markdown to show like how you would like that slide set up. So this slide has two columns on it. The first column has an image inside of it, so it's an image of this web page. And then the second column, 50% width, has another image of another web page inside of it, right? And then down below, I got some commented out HTML or Markdown stuff, and then I got my speaker notes down below. So that's all on this particular slide. And what this ends up rendering to is, I think it was probably like this slide here, where we have two columns, pictures in both columns, about 50% width for each one, right? And so I think the thing that I had to realize is that when I'm building HTML slides, I still feel like it's a lot of HTML. Like I have to know HTML in order to get these things to work properly. And so there's two things. One, you got to know the HTML, or you probably need to know the Markdown. Right. One of the frustrations I had with the slides was knowing about these different classes that you're putting inside these curly brackets. So in order to add like styling and stuff like that to a tag, like I have a feeling that these three colons here, that's just saying something like create a div tag. So what I mean by a div tag is if you were to look at the HTML for this thing.
Yeah, I think Tom Mock called it like fenced divs. Similarly, put it within a line, I think they call it fenced span.
Oh, they call it fenced?
Fenced divs. So just exactly what you were saying.
Oh, okay.
You're stuck in the middle.
Yeah. So you can see like there's a bunch of divs here. Here's the columns div that we created earlier. Here's the column div with a 50% width, and then our image is like stuck down inside of here. And I feel like you really got to know these classes properly, so that you can apply them. One of the frustrations I had was, how do I get these images to be centered inside of the 50% of the page that they're in, and I just don't know enough CSS and JavaScript, or really CSS and HTML, in order to style these things properly. So that's one of the things that I'm going to be kind of like playing around with and learning is about.
That's the one I have personally struggled with, that I can see a lot of uses for to generate articles and stuff, but for presentation where there's a lot of drag and dropping component, and if I really don't have code in the presentation, then like, okay, why am I going through?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't be interested to hear others' experiences.
Yeah, it feels a little bit more complicated than just like the markdown that I'm kind of used to for building those HTML and PDF files, you know, the reports.
And it's also not so much Markdown or Quarto. It's just slides in general, because, like you said, because it's a lot of visual component of where you place it and stuff, and it's just easy to place it in, like, let's say Google Slides than like trying to use classes.
Yeah. Yeah. So like just as a comparison, I'll show you this. This was here's a presentation that I created in Google Slides. I think we showed this like a couple of years ago, but like the style, like when I build presentations, like I like this style of building presentations. I mean, I wish I didn't have to do so much repetitive stuff, but I start off with one image, and then I use the same image over and over and make slight changes to it. You know, and I kind of feel like if I knew more of the HTML and CSS, I could take advantage of some of the Reveal.js features, which say, oh, you don't have to redraw that whole slide in order to move on to the next thought or to make a small adjustment to it.
In fact, maybe we can put in the resources. Like recently, Tom Mock gave a 2-hour workshop so he talks about some of these things, and we can put a resource to that. Like,
yeah, we'll put a link to that in the thing.
I think you can specify absolute coordinates to put the image where you put the class. So then, and then I think it has something called dot fragment or something that.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, so those are the exact features that I'm like, I want to take advantage of this, but I feel like I need to do more learning about it, you know, before I can. So, okay, is there anything else in here? But I mean, this is basically the style of the presentation. Another way that you can create slides. So we talked about the main way that I think people create slides is by using the second level header and then giving like a little name at the top of the slide. But you can create slides without titles just by using the 3 dashes. Like if you use 3 dashes, then it will just create a new slide. And so you'll notice that for a lot of the slides we started off this presentation with, they were just slides without headers, you know, so it's images and stuff like that. So, all right, so where can you learn more about this, right? Tom Mock gave an excellent presentation on a workshop on how to use Quarto. So I would definitely take a look at that. And I think at the RStudio conference, I think there were a number of different presentations on different features about Quarto that I would also look into. Maybe later on tonight or maybe later on this week, I can dig up some of those links and I'll add them to the Meetup page.
Yeah. But also, if you add it even to your slides, we can because we'll be adding this to the GitHub page.
Yeah.
Do that also.
Yeah, I'll upload these to a GitHub repository so that people can see these as well.
Yeah, and also now I think as you inspired me to try to move our GitHub page to Quarto. The link. Yeah, let me show that. And it was not too bad. It was pretty easy to move it. Actually, I found it easier than Blockdown. Previously, I think I was using Blockdown. This seemed easier. And again, it may just be my lack of familiarity with Blockdown. Let me see if I can share my screen. Oh, great. Okay. So this is kind of our new Quarto-based IndyUseR web page. Again, fairly simple. I mean, I didn't do too much with the theming and format. I just used the default one, and then it has things, and I think I put the TOC as true, which is why it kind of put the stuff. And it's amazing. Actually, we have been doing this since 2015. I didn't realize it. So yeah, we have been around for some time now. But maybe what I can show is the actual code behind it. So I think for the web page, the way it works is you create this quarto.yaml file. So here you say, I think they call it a project. So here it says type website. The one thing I couldn't get to work is they say that for, because I hosted this on GitHub using GH pages, but when I tried that quarto command for GH pages, something didn't work. So I just manually put the output directory for the HTML as docs here, because then within GitHub manually, I can say that use the docs for like the rendering kind of stuff. So not sure why the quarto thing wasn't working. But anyway, so this is kind of, if we go to here, so we have this image, IndyUseR home, about Meetup. This thing is coming in the way. So you kind of see that I put title as IndyUseR, and then in the navigation bar logo as this PNG. And then this is where kind of, so we had home, Meetup, and then somewhere I had about, I think. So this kind of maps to this, and then yeah, this I looked at like a gallery example and their documentation and created it. Again, I think this was probably like a default theme or something I used. So this part is what shows up there. And then if we go here, so in terms of the content, let's see. So this index.qmd is the main one where so here is where, so under the, so this is what shows up in let's see, all of this.
Oh, yeah, that maps really nicely to say like the year is kind of the section title, and then underneath it just give links with text like the month and the year as the
right. And also the nice thing here was, so you see here the 2021 we have put like this, and then we have put just links to the actual QMD document. So when you click on this, it goes to that QMD document. So that QMD document is, I don't know in Zoom, how do I move the top thing? It keeps up in the way of.
It's kind of annoying. I think you have to like highlight, you have to wait for it to come down, and then you got to click on one of the pieces and then drag it off to the side.
So for example, here in docs, I have, in meetings, I have some of these individual, it was actually a QMD file, which got converted into like a HTML file. So that way it works good. So like I said, for doing this, converting this, again, I kept the website fairly simple. So it was just putting some stuff in the YAML file, index.qmd, and then linking to some of the QMDs here. And that's what it is. So for example, here, if we go back, home is this, we go to about, it's this, and then if we click on Meetup, it'll actually go to the Meetup page. Now I forgot how to, Yeah, I think now I updated the link here also, I think. So it comes to this page now. And I think they have ways of generating books from Quarto, which also I think it has to be like a project, and then you can link to individual files. So that's the nice thing. You can have like, you don't have to have everything in one document. You can have like separate files that you just link to. So that's a quick tour. Since we are talking about Quarto, I thought we should move our GitHub site to Quarto. So
Yeah, I think it was a good idea, and it seemed like it was pretty simple.
yeah, and again, I didn't do anything. I guess with these HTML sites, you can get as fancy as you want, but my knowledge of HTML is limited to what are examples I see. So I just put that.
I think we're kind of a little bit over time, and so probably gonna have to wrap it up here in a second. Any last words people want to share?
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out on the webpage for our next meeting.
I think Ryan already volunteered for Power BI and R stuff, so we'll do that next time.
All right. We shall see you all next time.
See you. Yeah, very nice.